The Money Show.
Business Books.
Daniel Strauss is with us, the author of Billionaire Career. 2 years ago, came out with a book called The Billionaire Mindset, and it did very, very well. Subsequent to that, he has done many, many things, including turn up on the cover of Huisgenoot, which in your world, I mean, this is like the Posh and Becks of South Africa. You and Rolene, ex-Miss South Africa, business partners, working together, successful author, entrepreneur, all of these wonderful things. But to be on the Huisgenoot cover, dis toch wonderlik, is dit nie? Are your parents proud?
If you're Afrikaans, that is the pinnacle of success. As an Afrikaans person, there's nothing more that you can achieve. You can just sit back and do nothing for the rest of your life.
No, I think you peaked. You've peaked at 41. You have peaked. Now, I'm also told by people who know things about books and cover design that if you put the word billionaire on the cover of a book, it sells. Is that your strategy?
So I have a great publisher, and they have full ownership of the cover. I only have ownership of what happens inside. So whatever cover
they... It's more difficult about the covers. It's so much fun. But you got the title. Billionaire is a thing that you're crafting. Because Billionaire Mindset, very specifically, what you're wanting to do is to encourage people, I think, to think bigger.
Yeah, so essentially it's about thinking above the line in business terms, and that is a very well-defined line in terms of the Companies Act, with the shareholders and the directors above the line and the managers and the employees below the line. So when you start a business as an entrepreneur, you have to start thinking like a shareholder and director as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it's a big shift. And so many people who get into their own businesses do it because either they can't find a job, or they don't like their boss, or they don't like their company and think, I'll do it better myself. And they go off and then they're so busy trying to earn a crust because they've got to keep a salary coming in that they forget that point of actually being able to think considerably bigger about growth and opportunity. You've written this book differently from the last one. It's almost like a novel. Is it autobiographical? Because your hero, and he's a dashing, handsome young man, called Dan. You're not Dan, you're Daniel. But is Dan you, or you Dan? Are there bits of you in Dan?
So I'm not Dan, and Dan is not me, but there's definitely parts of me in Dan and parts of Dan in me, but there's also parts of me in various other characters.
So, schizophrenic.
I think if you write a storybook type, then you can only write from your own experience or things that you identify with, because you go emotionally so deep into this character that you must feel like you understand him. So I said, if Dan must walk in here now, I think he's going to strangle me, because the nonsense and the difficult times I've put this poor guy through. But
it's the story of a character who's building a business and who's going through the process of building a business, and the obstacles and the challenges and the trials and the tribulations and the successes and the joys and the sadness and the sorrow and the sleepless nights that come with doing that process.
Exactly. So one of the messages I hope some people will take from the book is that not everybody has to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. All of us define success differently. Some of us might define success in terms of shareholder value. Some of us might define it in terms of cash flow or assets. But some of us define success differently, like our relationships with our family, our spiritual experiences. And some people are extremely successful if they're a great teacher or a great wife and mother. And I think that's very important to understand, that it's not just about money.
It's not. But for those who harbor a desire to build something and to create something, some people will create a survivalist business that will earn them a nice living, and when they decide to retire or get hit by a bus, the business will go with them. Very few people, tiny proportion, ever create something that they'll be able to sell at a point in the future that will give them a pension, a retirement, a legacy for future generations of the family. It's a minuscule number. This is aimed, I think, at those sorts of people who are prepared to go, you know what, I think I can do something great.
So billionaires are measured, or their wealth is measured in terms of net worth. And the most considerable net worth is created through shareholder value. So if you've never thought of how shareholder value is created in your industry or in your company, it is unlikely that you will build considerable wealth in your lifetime. And this is what it's about, is to explain what it really takes to create significant shareholder value in your business. And for a lot of people, they're just not willing to do that.
And it's also incomprehensible to people that you'll do 18 hours a day and you'll do that 7 days a week. Yes, you may have a holiday and you may be able to afford a nice break with your family if they still recognize you at the end of the year. You may end up suffering personally for it, but there are some people sufficiently obsessed to go through this process. This agony, because it is agony. You build businesses, you know what it's like.
Bruce, can I play a little game with you?
Oh, hell. Okay, well, you're going to anyway because you've thrown down the gauntlet. Let's try.
What do you prefer, a Ferrari or a 4x4?
Neither.
Neither. Okay.
But if you were to make me choose,
Yeah.
I would choose the 4x4.
Great. So some people value practicality and robustness, and other people value sophistication. And we must understand that different people define businesses.
I'd just like to be able to get out of the car. Because I once got into a Diablo. I was filming a TV show, and I tried to get out of and the Diablo is on the ground, and your feet are almost above your face in these stupid cars, and you're sitting back in the. I had to roll out of the flipping thing. And this was a long time ago.
I'm sure you looked great while you were in it, right?
I felt like an idiot. Anyway, so sorry. Practicality over what was sophistication?
Sophistication.
No, Italians design many things well. I'm not mad about their cars. Anyway.
So it's very important to be clear about your aspirations.
Sure.
And also to be clear of what is a good business for you. Some people,
so important.
Some people think that a business is good if they can work from home. Some people think it's good if they can make more cash. Some people think it's good if they can become an extremely successful shareholder value creator. But there's different things. Some people want more free time. So there's
what does Dan do in this book? Because Dan is at risk of burnout. Dan suckles. I mean, he has a terrible life. I know what he was to punch you. But he's got a mentor, and you big on mentorship. You personally had a great mentor in your younger days who took you around, and I mean, almost in the tradition. I've just been reading the Harry Oppenheimer book by Mr. Cardo, who I'm seeing at Franschhoek on Saturday, and he talks about the PAs to the CEOs, Harry Oppenheimer's young people who he brought through the organization, showing them the ropes, identifying future leadership. Grant Patterson to Mark Lamberti, for example. Those sorts of people. You had that experience, and you understand that is valuable.
And I'm extremely grateful for that. But I have different mentors. And what we also need to understand is that some mentors give you bad advice. And we also need to identify that. So poor Dan also gets some bad advice in the book from some of his mentors.
But here's the difference. I mean, the difference between, I think, largely successful. My grandfather always said, never give advice. Fools won't take it, and wise people don't need it. And you've got to be able to, part of the success is be able to differentiate between good and bad advice, good and bad guidance, good and bad judgments. I mean, that's part of life and part of this journey, because there's no textbook for this stuff. I mean, other than the Billionaire Career, which you've written, of course.
But when you're young and you want it so badly and you don't really have the guidance, then sometimes you'll just listen to any advice. And that is a risk as well. So what we need to do is we need to identify people who are 3 or 4 steps ahead of us, people who can really tell you what's the best next step for you right now, and not the one that you have to take in 10 years from now.
But this is your choice, though, because also being desperate for advice could take you to the wrong mentor. And identifying your mentor and being very deliberate about that process, and not simply jumping onto the first person who says, yeah, okay, Sonny, I'll look after you. Because they're busy. They're unlikely to be malicious, but they're not going to be as focused on what it is that you're doing as you are. They'll have broad principles. If they come from your sector, they'll have experience. But it's difficult to find somebody that you absolutely click with. You click with your mentor. And,
yes.
And Dan maybe clicks with one of his too.
Yes, with a few of his mentors. Yeah. And he's blessed with these people who actually give him great advice in specific times of his life when he really needs it. And that actually gives... So mentors are almost like cheat codes. So they made the mistakes so you don't have to. So they almost give you the shortcuts to get there faster.
So that you can make your own special mistakes and you too can be a mentor one day. When you listen to Carol Payton talking about Andre de Ruyter and his book, people are cross, they're exhausted, they are frustrated, but I think more damaging than all of those things, because I think those are powerful emotions you can harness and do something with. People are, as huisgenoot readers would call it, moedeloos. They are so pop and exhausted by the amount of stuff that is in our society. How, when you write a book like this, which is a story about hope and opportunity and identifying and seizing opportunity, do you keep the energy up to deliver a book that says, yes, it's hard, but it's possible?
So I work with hundreds of entrepreneurs on a regular basis. I've got these seminars that I present few things. And what I found is that there's so many entrepreneurs and even people who are almost entrepreneurs who just need that little catalyst that actually takes them way further. Like, for instance, the one guy was a very successful entrepreneur for 20 years, and suddenly in 3 months, he increased his turnover with 38%. Some other people, for 5 years, they couldn't get funding for a 250 hectare expansion on their farms. And within 6 months, through the mentorship, they unlocked that. So it's just that little thing that's needed, and that's what makes me so excited and passionate about what I do.
But that goes to your billionaire mindset mantra,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It's like, tell me about your business. How do you think, and to help people think differently about them in their space and their business, often they just need somebody to say, it's scary, but do it.
Just that little piece, maybe a template that they needed for fundraising, or maybe just someone who asks the right questions, or get them to just look at it a little bit differently, then suddenly it unlocks that next steps where almost the heavens open, and suddenly this business just takes this massive leap forward. And that's what I had in my life with my mentors, and I'm grateful for. And I wish and I hope that the lessons that I give in this book, and when people read it, that they can have that same type of experience where they can just get that one thing that unlocks it.
Daniel Strauss' second book, it's called The Billionaire Career. You're not on the cover.
Not this time.
Not
Last time I was actually shaking when you did a Zoom call with me, and you ridiculed me about being on the cover. So I thought this time I'll be on the back.
I said it's quite irritating because here's this devastatingly good-looking man, and I really often struggle to tell. People say, "Oh, that was good-looking." I was like, I don't know, but this one, it's like. I must tell you, I was looking at your biography earlier there, and what does it say? Ex-paperboy. You know what I read?
Yeah.
Ex-playboy. That's what I read. That's what I read. Just because the association is so strong. Daniel Strauss, thank you for coming in. It's really nice to see you. The Billionaire Career, it is in all good bookstores, and there's a lot of really good stuff around at the moment. But this is for the entrepreneur in your life, the wannabe entrepreneur in your life, just to bring a little bit of hope and focus and some guidance in what is an often a tortured path.